Good evening. Welcome to our regular meeting for Monday, March 23, 2026. Earlier, the board met in closed session to take care of a couple of items. We're now ready for the open session portion of our meeting. Welcome you all here tonight. I'd like to say a special thank you to our East Rock hosts. There they are. Thank you for opening your building to us and providing dinner for the board. At this time, we will take just a moment for a moment of silence if you'd like to join us. Thank you. The next item on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd like to stand, we'll do that now. The next item on our agenda are the public comments. We have several this evening. And before we begin, since it's been a while since we've had some public comments, I'm just going to highlight a couple of the rules of procedure for this portion. Each speaker is recognized in the order listed on the sign-up sheet and will be limited to 3 minutes total. And there is a little chime that'll let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining. Community members or speakers should only speak once about any one item unless you have new material to add. All comments should be directed to the school board as a whole. And we do appreciate adhering to our character counts pillars when addressing the school board. And with that, I think that's a pretty good summary. But I will invite Ivy Herrick to come forward, and then if Molly Kate Adkins would be ready on standby, you'll be next.
Hello. My name is Ivy Herrick, and I'm a junior at Broadway High School. I am one of the few members of the Drama Club, Musical, One Act, and the International Thespian Society, and I was recently awarded the position of the Virginia Thespian Safety Officer. And after going through the proposed budget for the 2026-2027 school year, I noticed that there was not a budget in place for a theater teacher at Broadway again this year. As I'm sure you all know, the theater program at Broadway has been running under several different advisors, coaches, and teachers for the past 5 years. And this has done immense damage to our program as a whole, as the disconnect between every theater opportunity has led to a disconnect between everyone involved. I have tried to bridge the gap personally, but as a student, it's nearly impossible to single-handedly connect the entire program. A theater teacher would unite our program and allow us to grow our community farther. We need a theater teacher to return our program to the level of performance and school-wide fundraising that it was in my parents' generation. My peers and I have been asking for a theater class for years, at least since I was a freshman. The administration at Broadway, when asked by several different students, said that if enough students signed up for a theater class, that they would find a theater teacher to teach it. Unfortunately, I don't think we have nearly enough people signed up, but we have been rallying for at least 20 people, and I know many middle schoolers have signed up already. And they were either planning to register for a theater class once registration started or had already registered. Speaking of the middle school, at J. Frank Hilliard Middle School, their theater program is united by their musical theater teacher, who also directs their spring showcase and the school musical. It is only at Broadway High School where our theater program is in shambles. Every other school in the county has a theater teacher and theater class. Spotswood has Justine Mackey, who teaches only theater classes and has created one of the strongest theater programs in the state. Turner Ashby has Cecile Deason, who vertically united their theater program by teaching both at Wilbur Pence Middle and Turner Ashby High. East Rock has Grace Altman, a recent JMU grad, who shows that there are plenty of people available to teach theater in the Valley, especially from JMU. I say all of this to push you all to consider adding a theater teacher into the budget for Broadway High School, and by doing so, further diversify and expand the education of Broadway theater students. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next up is Molly Kate Adkins, and on deck is Christian Herrick.
Hi there, I'm Malika Adkins. I'm a senior at Broadway High School, and I am also here advocating for a theater teacher at Broadway High School. Piggybacking off of what Ivy Herrick said, the disconnect in our school would never have been allowed to happen if it was any other type of extracurricular. As you know, at Broadway, we have a very strong FFA and agricultural community. Despite having multiple teachers, it is connected through every program they put on. At Broadway High School, our musical and our drama club, and I'm the vice president of drama club, and our one act and our plays that we put on are very disconnected, and it's always sponsored by different people, and we would just really appreciate it if we could possibly have one person designated so we know who to go to if we have questions or if we want to learn something. It just would be a lot easier for our students, and I know I'm a senior, so next year won't really matter to me, but I do really care for my theater friends at Broadway, and I'd love to see them have more opportunities as I leave the school. The teachers organize subject-wide fundraisers across the entire agricultural department to fund the FFA trips, which is great. We find it incredibly hypocritical that the same respect and connectivity is not granted to the theater program. So if we have field trips or if we, just different things, it's hard to have the same connecting, it's hard who to go to. So we just ask that we're taken seriously here at Broadway. We've got a great theater program, we got great theater people, and we have many theater advocates. It's just a matter of taking the steps to advocate for a theater teacher. So that's all I have to say. So thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments. Our final speaker is Christian Herrick.
Good evening, school board members and superintendent, community members as well. My name is Christian Herrick. I know many of you, but for those I don't know, I'm a local business owner, a board member of the Rockingham Educational Foundation. I'm also a Broadway High School alum, and as my wonderful daughter said, I'm also, surprise, surprise, a theater alum from Broadway High School. Unfortunately, my picture is still on the wall there with my beautiful wife for theater. It's an old picture, but it's still on the wall. Most importantly, though, I am a father of one former and three current RCPS students, all involved in theater. I don't do theater anymore, although I'm a big advocate, and I am a big believer in the theater program. As an employer, I believe in the theater program because it prepares students to become employable people. It teaches them to fail in a way that they can then pick themselves up and continue on. It teaches them to work with others very well. And like the students before me have said, it's a shame that Broadway High School, with a name like it has, is the one high school in the county that does not have a theater teacher. I find that a bit ironic and unfortunate. As a business owner, besides all the other things that I am always looking forward to supporting the theater program financially and otherwise, and I do that. Like they had said, it's a bit disjointed and difficult to do, but I will continue to do that and hope that you will also follow our lead in the Broadway area. Thank you for your time.
Thank you also for your comments. The next item on our agenda tonight is the consent agenda. Board members, there are many things there for your approval. The minutes from March 9th, March 16th, March 18th, bills and mileage from February of 2026. There's several field trips listed there, the personnel listing, and we do just need one motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Laura. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Burgoyne. Any questions or comments? All those in favor of approving tonight's consent agenda, please say yes. Yes. All those opposed say no. Motion passes 5-0. That brings us into our action items. We have 3 of those. Mr. Justin Moyers is going to be presenting the first item, capital projects budget amendment for the fiscal year 2026. Mr. Moyers. Or is that Dr. Shiflett? Capital projects? That's okay.
We got lots of budget items on the agenda tonight, so I want to make sure I had the right one. So the amendment before you is for the current year. This is to finish up the school camera project that you all approved earlier on in the school year. All this does is move money to the capital projects fund from the operating fund, because that's where we actually spent the money out of for the cameras. So it's just kind of a procedural thing that we need to have done, because the County Board of Supervisors approves by fund, not by total budget.
Board members, do we have a motion to, Dr. Shiflett?
Chair Hurston, board members, I recommend approval of the budget amendment that will transfer appropriate funds from the current year operating fund to the capital projects fund.
Thank you, Dr. Shiflett. Board members, do we have a motion?
I move to follow the superintendent's recommendation to approve a budget amendment that will transfer appropriate funds from the current year operating fund to the capital projects fund.
Thank you, Ms. Cave. Do we have a second? Thank you, Ms. Laura. Board members, do you have any questions?
I have a question. Just to be clear, so this money was kind of earmarked for the capital improvement, but it was placed in the other fund?
Yes. We had money from the operating budget and from the capital projects fund to finish the camera project. The entire expenditure came out of the capital projects fund, so this is moving the operating money that we had designated to cover it.
Yes. So it's really just moving money that we have to authorize to move so that you can spend it properly.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the budget amendment, please say yes. Yes. All those opposed say no. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
The next item on our action item list is a bid recommendation for the J. Frank Hilliard Middle School partial re-roofing. Mr. Reed, welcome to the podium.
Thank you. Chair Hurst, Dr. Shiflett, members of the board. The bid for the partial re-roofing at J. Frank Hilliard Middle School was properly specified and advertised. We sent it to 3 suppliers, and 3 suppliers attended our mandatory pre-bid on Wednesday, February 25th. The 3 suppliers responded with sealed bids, and our recommendation is to award the contract in the amount of $168,969 to Skyline Roofing from Rockingham, Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Reed. Dr. Shiflett?
Chair Hurston, board members, I recommend awarding the bid for partial re-roofing at J. Frank Hilliard Middle School to the lowest bidder as presented by Steve Reed, Director of Maintenance.
Thank you, Dr. Shiflett. Board members, do we have a motion to follow?
I move we follow the superintendent's recommendation to award the bid for partial roofing at J. Frank Hilliard Middle School to the lowest bidder presented by Steve Reed, Director of Maintenance.
Thank you, Ms. Laura. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Burgoyne. Any questions or comments?
Can I ask a question? Could you just give us a little bit of information about the roof and the condition it's in, why it's, how old it is, what part we're replacing?
Boy, those are questions I was not expecting. So the area of the roof that we are replacing is over the cafeteria, and then the existing roof that's the same height down the ag hall all the way down to the tech ed shop. So that is this roof section that we are replacing. The age, I'm not exactly sure, but it's probably 35 years old. This is part of our ongoing replacement of roofs that we have a list of. So there's another section that we have in our schedule to happen next year for Hilliard, if budget allows. But this is what we had in working with Carlisle, the roofing manufacturer, and one of the audits they did with us at the school to replace this year.
And when will the work be completed?
It will be completed before July 1. This is this year's money.
Anything else, board members?
Wait, one more. So are we going to do it when students are not there? Or are we going to try to hit it sooner?
It will happen more than likely when school is in session, yes.
Okay. Great. And to let everybody else know, I've kind of been asking Mr. Reed about this project because it is needed. And I mean, like, when it rains, there's moisture inside the school.
It pours.
So, yeah, it pours inside the school. So thank you so much for getting this done for us.
Anything else, board members? Okay, we have a motion to award the bid for partial re-roofing to the lowest bidder as presented by Steve Reed. All those in favor, please say yes. Yes.
Yes.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes 5-0. Our final action item is brought to us by Dr. Shiflett. It is the 2026-2027 Rockingham County Public School Division budget.
Thank you, Chair Hurst. Board members, if you will recall, at our March 9th meeting, I gave a proposed budget recommendation. In your packet, you can see there are several pages for information. There's a page that has the expenditures for 26-27, the revenue, what we project will be our revenue for 26-27, the personnel request, which is incorporated into the budget, the capital projects fund, and the last page of the packet is the food service fund. So I recommend approval of the fiscal year 2026-2027 RCPS School Division budget, including Fund 2201 School Operating Budget in the amount of $201,058,735. Fund 2103 School Capital Projects Budget in the amount of $63,721,765. And Fund 2202 School Food Service Budget in the amount of $7,920,300.
Thank you, Dr. Shiflett. Board members, do we have a motion to follow his recommendation?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Cave. Do we have a second?
Second, I think we're all just taking a moment to look over it one last time, so we're just being a little slow to the mic.
That's okay, I understand.
We could get a
We have a
second,
proper
then we would
motion
have
and a
time.
second. Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Shiflett or any comments before we vote? And I'll start with my
Say
question
nothing's-
while you all are
You go ahead.
reviewing. Dr. Shiflett, were there some items what are some items maybe that we had hoped or wished for, but we were unable to just make happen this time? Because there's a lot of requests and very worthy requests that come before the board, but we're just not always able to. Can you highlight some of those, please?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, Chair Hurst. I'd be glad to. So, as you will recall, during this process, we solicited feedback from our principals, Director of Maintenance, Mr. Steve Reed, that you just heard from, met with all of them in the fall, trying to determine what their needs are at each individual schools. And so we have a host of, just some upgrades or, maintenance repairs that we would like to have maybe taken on. But again, we have limited resources. I'm not going to get into all the even along with that personnel request that we received. But, this group had talked about early on at our first budget work session doing, earmarking a significant sum of money to put towards elementary playgrounds, something that we really haven't assisted with in the past. And so really with some budget constraints, not able to do that. The baseball lights at Turner Ashby High School are on our list of things we weren't able to address this year. replacing the bleachers at Hilliard Middle School. So I think they have some of the old wooden bleachers and wanting to replace those. The lecture room folding partition at Spotswood High School, right, to divide those two rooms is needing repair. Sanding the main gym floor at Turner Ashby High School and getting it kind of down to the original. So they're just to name a few of the things that, had we had more funds, we could have maybe taken on some of these projects, but we have to make decisions and try to focus on, what we have to take care of in the immediate term right now, this school year, what things can wait another year or two, and then we'll, they're on the list, right? So they're not, going away, but they're not forgotten, but, it may be, the next budget cycle that we were able to address some of these, or, perhaps if we, end up with some additional funding from some state revenue source or what have you, then we may be able to, address some of these. But it's always that tough conversation that we have during the budget cycle, right? Folks, principals and supervisors and directors are asking for additional resources, repairs, maintenance, what have you. And we just have to make hard decisions and say no to some things, right, that maybe we would like to purchase, but we just don't have the funds to do it at this time.
Thank you. Board members, do you have other questions?
I'd just like to thank Chair Hurst and Dr. Shiflett for working so hard on this budget and explain to the group the reason we were kind of taking a moment. We have been working hard on this budget, harder than I think I've ever worked in the past, with our dialogue and just having a really, really good understanding of exactly what we're doing. And we're actually a little bit ahead of the game in that in the past, we've had to meet during spring break to pass the budget. And we don't have to do that now. But because of that, there were a couple of things that we were all looking, oh, did this make it? Did that make it? Where did we land on everything? And I, for one, I won't speak for the rest of the board, but I, for one, definitely wanted to look over and really take a hard look at the final budget before I said yes. So that's why we needed a beat that time. So thank you so much for all of your hard work, and the rest of the board too. We've had some really great conversation that I've not had with past boards, and I really appreciate the open communication that we had. I think it was the best budget season I've ever been through. So that's awesome. So yay team. And I guess thank you for everything, and please understand our hesitancy just now.
Other board members?
I was going to echo something like that, just because I want to make sure that, especially as I'm learning this job and you all are out here watching this, that we are spending hours and hours and hours on these things. It might look like we're coming up here and just going, check box, yes. But we were given this binder full of information, paring down all the different requests. So we've been working on this for months, and this vote is the final product of a lot of work, just so you're all aware.
Do we have a second on that motion? Ms. Laura did.
Thank you.
I do have a question, Dr. Shiflett, and just for clarity for our community, the cost of operating such a large district, can you speak to, like, per student, how much that costs and why our county is so unique? I think that's important because I think we have a lot of different programs here in Rockingham County because we're such a large division and a very diverse large division, if you wouldn't mind.
So I think some of the costs or some of the reasons for the increased costs, right? We know as a country we're dealing with some inflation over the last number of years, and so the cost of doing business has increased. About 86% of our budget every year is spent on salaries and benefits. So that is a significant large part of our operating budget. And what we have experienced in the last 3 or 4 years is a significant increase in our number of EL students that we serve and the number of special education students that we serve. And not every student, it's not always the same, right? And so it takes sometimes some additional resources to serve some of our student populations. We also have gifted students that, we go to the governor's school, and so there's different costs. I think something that's also unique with Rockingham County is we're very large geographically, so when we had conversations, I think maybe the last meeting when Mr. Sowers talked about transportation, the amount of miles that we put on our buses is somewhat unique. And Mr. Moyers and I had a pretty interesting conversation today about something that's unique to Rockingham County. A large portion, and I don't know exactly percentage-wise, I need to investigate this, but a large portion of our county does not yield any revenue for us in terms of taxes. Do you know what those places are? The national parks that we love so much in the U.S. National Forest. Now, we get a small little piece of revenue from the U.S. National Forest, I think in the neighborhood of $20,000 or $30,000. It's not significant. But on the eastern side, we have the Blue Ridge Mountains, and that's the Shenandoah National Park. And then on the western side, we have the Shenandoah Mountains with the George Washington National Forest, right? And that is a huge benefit to our community, right, to have those beautiful resources that surround us, but we generate no tax dollars from that, right? So if that was, let's say, subdivision, then I'm not suggesting that. You understand what I'm saying here, right? But if those things were whatever else, right, if they were industries or homes, but they're not, right? But it's one of the reasons we love living here in the Shenandoah Valley is because of the mountains and the national parks and the national forest. But we don't earn, just like, we are all residents of Rockingham County, and we get that tax bill that says, hey, you live here, you have a home here, and you have to pay taxes. Well, Uncle Sam doesn't do that for us with the national parks, right? He doesn't say, well, how much is the value of the land? And again, we do get a small percentage of dollars, but it's insignificant to what we're doing. So I think there's some uniqueness about, being in the valley and what we're doing and how we're doing business. We also have some small, very small rural community schools, which are much beloved by families, but there's always economies of scale, right? The bigger the schools, the more, the more economic you can be and the more savings. So when you try to have small, community schools, which I'm a huge fan of having those, but it also kind of increases your price per pupil. If you give me a moment, I could get out my calculator and do a tabulation for you on price per pupil here, but I'm not exactly sure how accurate that would be. But there is comparisons you can do with, in other places and other school divisions, but I think these are some things that make us somewhat unique into what we're trying to accomplish. Did that answer your question?
Anything further, board members? We have a motion to follow the superintendent's recommendation to approve the 26-27 school division budget, including Fund 2201 school operating budget in the in the amount of $201,058,735. Fund 2103 school capital projects budget in the amount of $63,721,765, and Fund 2202 school school food service budget in the amount of $7,920,300. All those in favor of approving that motion, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. All those opposed say no. Motion passes 5-0. Dr. Shiflett, I did forget to ask you, are you presenting this to the Board of Supervisors soon? I just want the public to understand that now we go to the next place.
Yes.
And submit our budget
I am presenting
request.
our approved budget to the Rockingham County Board of Supervisors on this Wednesday, around 6 o'clock. I think the meeting starts at 6, and so I'll be on their agenda. I'm not exactly sure exactly what time, but I'll be attending that meeting and presenting our budget to the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you. Board members, that concludes action items and moves us into information items, of which we have several. The first is with Ms. Carrie Gray, Supervisor of Career and Technical Education, who is presenting the 26-27 Perkins Local Plan.
Thank you, Chair Hurst, School Board, and Dr. Shiflett. You have in your meeting documents the proposed 2026-27 Federal Career and Technical Education Local Plan. This is our application for federal funding. For clarity's sake, I'll just hit some of the high points tonight, and then if you have questions between now and when I bring it back to you at the next meeting to ask for approval, I'm happy to answer those. The first 5 pages of the application are the assurances that we agree to in accepting the federal money. And then following that is our annual performance report. And this goes through all the Virginia agreed upon targets, and we met all of them except for academic proficiency in English language arts for general and special populations. And then a few meetings ago when I did the CTE update, we talked about non-traditional enrollment. And those are students that enroll in coursework where the predominantly employed gender is opposite of their gender. And so we talked about just how educating students on other opportunities is the way to combat that, but we, again, did not meet that non-traditional enrollment target. And so we'll continue with that education and letting students know what careers are available to them. The application is based on actually the 25-26 allotment, and then we get our actual 26-27 allotment in July. At that point, I do an amendment to the Perkins local plan. And usually what I change, just so you know, is the equipment line item on the budget, because that's the largest piece of what I'm requesting, and it's just easy to shift it in one direction or another. So this year's allotment is $210,000, $210,590.87. So that's what the application is based on. Our priorities are teacher PD, and we'll be focusing to do our part in meeting that English language arts target on some technical reading and writing and the content in CTE. And so some of our teacher professional development will be focused on that. Also career exploration and aligning student courses of studies to their career interests and their talents based on a platform that we're using called Zello. We give the percentage of enrollment of our total CTE population. We give that percentage of our Perkins plan to MTC for equipment. And so that's just over $35,000, about 17% of our total enrollment this year. And then the largest chunk of the budget, over $97,000, is for CTE equipment upgrades. That's anything from computer lab replacements. We replace one business computer lab at every high school each year, to bandsaws, to laser engravers, 3D printers. It runs the whole gamut that our programs run. And then about $4,500 for work-based learning experiences. Most of that's for transportation to our career exploration events or industry tours, job shadowing, those types of things. And then following the RCPS plan is the MTC plan, and they're also focusing on professional development, equipment, and career exploration are their biggest expenditures. Their annual performance report looks very similar to ours because the bulk of the students at MTC are RCPS students, so that's reflected in their APR. In addition, they didn't meet the target for science and industry credential attainment, and so their professional development will be focused on those areas as well. So that is a very brief overview. Happy to answer any questions or get a little deeper into any line items.
Board members, I'll open it for questions. Did I see that the actual performance criteria are based on end of course SOL tests?
That's correct. Okay. For the academic proficiency.
Lot of different people contributing to that instruction.
Yes, and we need to do our part as well.
Anything else, board members? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next information item we have is coming to us from Miss Becky Ford, who is our supervisor of fine arts and is going to present an overview of the fine arts programming in Rockingham County Public Schools. Thank you, Miss Ford.
Good evening, Dr. Shiflett, Chair Hurst, and members of the school board. Thank you for having us tonight and for the opportunity to speak to the fine arts in Rockingham County. Tonight, in honor of March being Fine Arts in Our Schools Month, I'm here to give you just a brief snapshot of what's going on with our current programs, student participation, and the impact that all of these programs have across our division. At the elementary level, fine arts teachers serve every single student in the building. On average, teachers serve about 100 students a day, and in a week, they see between 429 and 625 different students every week. Some of those students are all in one building, and some of that is a teacher who serves multiple buildings. But every single week, those teachers see approximately 500 students, which is just amazing. They don't only just provide instruction, they're also doing programs, evening events, managing large inventories, exhibitions, and some of them are itinerant, which means that they not only do that for one building, but for two. They're doing bus duty and morning duty at multiple schools, knowing the administration and the parents at multiple schools, and traveling back and forth and having things in different buildings. It's a very difficult job, and they do a lot of hard work to do that. I also want to express my appreciation at this time that in the proposed budget, it was a consideration to add additional people. That would go a long way towards managing student loads and managing the quality of instruction. Our elementary schools are so important because they serve as the foundation to everything that goes on in the secondary schools. Consistent instruction and strong pedagogy are essential to building the skills and the knowledge, the confidence, and the interest that allows students to go on further. When the elementary step foundation is strong, we see higher levels of participation and better success in our secondary programs. At the secondary level, we have over 3,300 student enrollments in fine arts courses across our middle schools and high schools, which is just incredible. That includes everything, so visual art, music and theater, spanning instrumental and vocal general music, and that indicates a strong student interest, but also a wide breadth of programming, and we're gonna get into that in a minute. Enrollment is strongest in the areas where programs are consistently available. So as we see, visual arts are our strongest consistency with 1,654 students enrolled. Music has 1,170 students, which is split fairly evenly across instrumental, vocal, and general music subjects, and theater has 479 students, which does speak to some of our inequities in just the programs that are available, and I think as we continue to strengthen that, we will see dividends there. As we said, secondary students have access to a wide range of classes. So it begins in middle school with some exploratory classes, and it continues level high school offerings. Some of them are ensemble-based, and some of them are individually and have very specialized areas. So the courses shown here are not everything, but I tried to give you some basics of what's available in each area. The programs are intentionally structured as a sequence of leveled courses. And I think this is one of the biggest strengths that we have in Rockingham County, where we have schools that have the staffing and the programs available to have a beginning, an intermediate, and an advanced course. We're able to meet students at their proximal zone of development. And when we are able to do that, they're able to learn better and continue to grow better, rather than when we have just one mix of students where teachers are trying to differentiate to everybody. Something new for this year is that, thanks to the board, we were able to move our performing arts teachers at the secondary level to extended contracts. And what that meant was, instead of a single stipend for each year, teachers were able to be paid for the extra hours that they are putting in. This provides a more consistent model for the secondary performing arts programs. We just really wanted to make sure that we said thank you for that, to make sure that teachers are compensated for the time that they're putting in. This time is directly spent with students, and so you can see at the middle school and high school level, depending on the discipline area, we have different hours that they tend to be putting in, and that's for evening performances, weekends, Saturdays that they're at district honor ensembles, weeks that they go to state level trips, all the inventories. Each high school has, if I had to guess, 1,500 to 2,000 different pieces of music in the choral library and in the band library. And so they're keeping up with all that music, and each individual piece has hundreds of parts in it. So it is a huge logistical thing to keep up with. And so we see the different hours that we have been allotted there. It is 75 hours equals a half a month. So that's how we have our 10 and a half, 11 and 11 half months. And as you can see, the band directors at the high school level are typically putting in more than 500 hours extra. And that is because in addition to all of their curricular duties, they also have marching band, which is co-curricular, which just takes up an entire season. Our students and our teachers are excelling at such a high level. I just wanted to give a couple shout outs to the students and everything that they are doing and our teachers. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see students that have made all state honors. This is middle school and high school people who have earned the right to go to all-state band and choir. That will be in April in Richmond, and we are just so excited for the students. That is due to their individual hard work and the training that their teacher has provided them, and so we're just so proud. We had, a month or two ago, the Shakespeare competitions, which started at a school level, and then the two winners from each school level went on to the regional competition, which was at Blackfriars Playhouse. So it was so cool to get to go and see them performing Shakespeare on a Shakespearean stage. And one of our students, Peyton Kite, placed second in the region, so he is the runner-up to go to New York if something happens to the first place winner. We're just so proud of them. And then in terms of theatrical productions, there was too much to list. But we had 9 secondary musicals. 2 of our schools performed at the Virginia Thespians Festival State Festival. That was Spotswood and Turner Ashby's high schools. One act, we had students from multiple schools going and teachers from all of our schools going to these conferences. And so it's just amazing what they're doing. We had 2 of our schools, Broadway High School and Turner Ashby High School, just this last week, become blue ribbon schools. And what that means is that they performed and were awarded a superior rating at both concert assessment for choir and for band. And so both programs have to be achieving on a superior level, which is the highest honor that you can get. And that's based on our SOLs. So they go and they perform a concert on the stage in front of a bunch of judges who look at the Virginia State SOLs and judge the kids and the director on how well they're performing. So that just says so much. So we're so proud of those schools. Now, these are just a couple. I couldn't even fit everything on the slide. There's so many more, and so I know each school has something amazing going on. We just want to shout out to what they're doing. Going to the state level, there's 2 major updates that I wanted to provide you with from the state. The first one has been approved by the Virginia General Assembly, but is currently pending final approval by the governor. If implemented, it's going to recognize sustained achievement in the fine arts coursework and performance by putting a fine arts seal on a student's diploma, equivalent to what we already have with some other disciplines. This provides a formal way for students to be recognized for their work in the arts and reinforces the value of fine arts as part of a well-rounded education. Secondly, there was a statewide study using VDOE data. It examined the relationship of fine arts participation and enrollment in courses and chronic absenteeism. And what they found was that students who enrolled in one fine arts course were less absent than other students. And if they were what they called a career fine arts student, which meant that they enrolled in one course each year through the 4 years of the high school, they were between 32 to 50% less likely to be chronic absenteeism students. And so that is correlational, not causational data, let's be clear. But I think it shows just such a strong percentage of our students that when they are engaged, when they're involved, when they have a place that makes them feel at home and they identify as part of that school community, it makes such a big difference. And it reinforces what we see locally, that the fine arts programs are not just opportunities for creativity and performance, but they're just an indicator of overall student success. And so we are so grateful to have a board that reinforces this. I just want to say, seeing all of you all at musicals, seeing you all at performances and concert assessments, I know you all believe this, but I just want to say why fine arts matters. And it's individual to every student. Fine arts mattered to me in my life. It matters to every student who's involved in it in their life in a different way. But overall, we see that kids are engaged. They find a place of belonging in the fine arts. And it's so important to have. It builds important skills in creativity, communication, collaboration. All of our C's that we like to talk about in school, they're all found in the fine arts. It provides students opportunities to perform, present, and be recognized. It strengthens school culture, having a fight song, having the national anthem played at school events, and it connects our families and our communities with people who used to go to the school, people who are still in the community, and it provides a strong foundation there. Fine arts programs in Rockingham serve a large number of students. It provides such meaningful opportunities, and continued support of these opportunities remaining accessible and sustainable for our students and teachers goes a very long way. We'd like to thank you for your time, and to celebrate Fine Arts Month, we do have a small token of gratitude for you all with our Fine Arts Cups of Favorites. Those are going to be going out to every fine arts teacher in the district. We asked them for some of their favorites at the beginning of the year, and we tried to collect the things that they mentioned on their favorites, whether it was a color or a certain soda or a candy. And a huge shout out to Rebecca McClure-Hooper for helping me with that. It was a huge lift, but we tried to get at least one favorite of everybody. And so we hope that you find a favorite in our Fine Arts Cups. But thank you so much for your time tonight and for your attention all year long.
Thank you, Mrs. Ford. Board members, do you have any questions for her?
I do. In regards to Broadway High School, I feel like this is like perfect follow-up to what they were here advocating for. And looking at these numbers here, how do we help? How do we fix this?
Mr. Gillette, does the clicker go back? Thank you. It can be very difficult to get enrollment up. It becomes a little bit of a chicken and an egg situation. I think if we have a teacher in place, more students will sign up. But we can't get a teacher in place until students sign up, right? I think the biggest thing to look at is as we start enrollment, students at the high school level can only sign up for Theater 1. That's the only class that they can sign up for. But as you see at the high school level beneath that dotted line, we've got Theater 1, 2, 3, and 4, and Technical Theater 1 and 2. So if we can build that first class of students, then they're gonna graduate from Theater 1 into Theater 2. And then Theater 3. It's going to continue to build. Enrollment will continue to grow. If we could do something similar to what the TA district has, where there's a theater teacher across the middle school and the high school, I believe that will build retention. And it is difficult. It is difficult to say, hey, we only have a couple students, let's hire a teacher. And especially when budgets are tight, we understand this. But I do want to reiterate that having sustainable equity across the division is so important. The students are working hard. The teachers are working so hard. You know, they had teachers who took them to the Virginia Thespians Festival this year. It's not part of their job description. They didn't get paid for it. But the teachers are going out of their way to try and provide students with these opportunities. I think the kids are showing that they want the opportunities. I think the more we can continue to support that, but it is one of those things where we can't get the enrollment really until we have a teacher in place.
Can I ask a question about that? Just thinking back to when I was the choir director at Spotswood, like I actually wrote the curriculum for this musical theater course. And one of the things I remember them telling me at the time was you can't offer a class at one school and not have it at the others because of the equity situation. So A, has that changed? And B, if it hasn't, how are we existing by offering these at other schools and not, like, how are we not bound by?
Is it just theater that's not offered at Broadway?
In terms of fine arts courses?
Right. And how long has it not been offered? Has it been 10 years, 20 years, forever?
I want to say between 5 to 7 years, but that's off the top of my head, and I would want to check that data.
So numbers just declined, and then they said
it had to do with personnel and licensure.
Okay. Is it not offered at Broadway, or is it not staffed at Broadway? You can sign up for it.
It is not staffed at Broadway.
And if enough kids sign up for it, then we can find a teacher. So, right? We can attempt to find a teacher. So, again, cart and horse, right? I know for a fact that kids will sign up for certain classes because they want Mr. M. But if they don't know who the teacher is, they're way less likely to sign up for the class. So we're kind of in that spot. But
that's definitely a challenge. I do know that we're offering junior ROTC this year at Broadway High School for the first time. As of today, we do not have an instructor, but we offered it. Now that we have enough students, that we'll hire the instructor, right? So, and now we'll see if the program can grow based on who that instructor is and how well he or she can build that program, right? So I get the chicken and egg scenario where we are, but kids may sign up for it. It's in the program of studies, but we do that not just fine arts, but with all of our elective courses. We determine, or even some of our advanced placement courses. Can we offer this particular course if only 6 students have, enrolled or registered? And sometimes we offer some of those higher level courses every other year, just so we can try to get the numbers. But it comes down to, what's feasible, what can we offer?
So are there theater programs like designated at the middle schools?
Two of our middle schools have theater being taught by theater licensed people. 2 of our middle schools have musical theater being taught by a vocal instructor. So musical theater can be taught by somebody with a vocal licensure. Theater cannot.
One thought, one question that I have is at the elementary school, we have great art classes, we have great art teachers, and everybody in elementary school, all their years of elementary school, take art once a week. They also have incredible music teachers who are teaching music once a week. So all students are getting that fine arts curriculum in elementary school. And then when we get to the middle school, it kind of just wanes, maybe in some areas. So I just wondered, in your opinion, what can be done at the elementary level to recruit better, maybe for fine arts? Do we need to look at theater as an option at the elementary level, as a brief special? Maybe we introduce it as a special. I don't know. What are your suggestions? Because sometimes I think it's just getting kids involved in the opportunities that do exist, and then they see, hey, I really like theater. I'd like to sign up for that. But I also know at the middle school, you kind of get into one track or the other, right? So when you enter in 6th grade, you either have to pick band or the four different classes that you take, one each 9 weeks for the year, right? And so a lot of students, if you're picking band, you don't have the opportunity to try out ag or art. But if you're in the four course combo as your elective, you're not in band, right? So talk me through some options, some suggestions of things we can do maybe, or we can look at doing in the future.
The scheduling is prohibitive in middle school, and that has all kinds of complicating features that are very effective of that. I would hesitate to talk about specifics. I would love to look into that more and get back to you, but I would hesitate to speak off the cuff about that.
Okay. I'm happy to speak off the cuff about that. I would say, I don't know that we need to make theater a special in elementary school. I don't know that that's even developmentally appropriate. But I think one of the great things we could do, the 5th grade musicals are a great way to plug kids into theater experiences that might launch them into the future, or even incorporating them into some content, like class-based projects, I think could be sufficient. But I was going to speak about this because eventually I would love to see no itinerant music positions, for example, in the elementary schools, and then that would give the bandwidth for every elementary school to be able to do the 5th grade musical, right? So right now, if we've got teachers divided between small schools, they are unable to do that because they're divided. And that would be great, because these programs require continuity. If you're not familiar with arts programs, when you lose them, like 6th grade, they decide to take ag or whatever, they're done. They're likely not coming back, and that's really hard because there's so many choices. So it's really important to have continuity across. If you don't have the program in middle school, it's less likely to succeed at the high school. If you have a weaker teacher or program in one place than the other, then that can affect feeder situations. Sometimes these classes are one-off on schedules, and so if the kids can't get into that class because it's against, say, you want to take Latin, and it's only offered at the same time as Theater 2, well then you've got to choose, and the language wins because you have to take the language. So there's a lot of complicated scheduling things, but I do think if we could get long-term, I know budgets, if you build it, they will come, but if they aren't there, you can't fund it. So We're gonna maybe just have to be creative with some of that, but arts are not an extra. Like, there are so many people that think like, and across the nation, we've seen that over the years, decades, people cut things. But if we're thinking about attention and we're thinking about behavior and student achievement, then we need to recognize that arts are like one of the very most powerful tools we have at our disposal, next to physical activity, which is my other obsession. Like when I taught music, I teach science, the physics of sound, the physiology of the body. You teach history, the context of a composition, the composer, the background, the time period in the world that that occurred in, reading skills, tracking, decoding, sequencing, speaking and communication skills. You teach math with counting, timing, fractions, pattern recognition, and English, poetry. Theater is great for this. Language arts, interpretation, diction, pronunciation, foreign languages, social emotional things like self-control and listening, teamwork, critical thinking. You guys named, thank you for speaking earlier, just preparing students to become employable. Great, I mean, we're learning these things in these programs, and so they are fundamental to the success of our students. They are not extra. So I hope you all are confident. I will be doing what I can to convince everyone up here that I'm right, and that we can funnel money into these things. But it's always a slow process. And but if you got some fundraising, be happy to talk to you afterwards. See what we can do to be creative. Because I'd like to be a yes person as much as possible. But anyway, I have lots of ideas, so I'll table them for not a Monday night.
Board members, any other questions?
I will just share, I've always been an advocate for these programs and supported them, but I am a terrible singer and have no skill when it comes to instruments. But my daughter is in love with singing, and she's going to be a rock star one day in her head. And so I sign her up for all the things and do the music classes, and she has a vocal coach and all those things that I know nothing about. So I care very deeply about this. I just don't, and I'm just sidebarring with Sarah. I'm going, what is that? I don't understand if we don't have a theater program, how we have a musical. I don't want to sound stupid. So I guess I just need to know more, and certainly don't want Broadway to feel slighted by the other schools that it's not offered there. So anything that we can do to help, please give us more information and help us help you. So thank you guys.
I just want to add that, first of all, when I was agreeing with you, when you said you couldn't sing, I'm in the same boat. I can't sing, love it. I go to all the musicals. I wish my kids had done musicals, but I think they got their musical talent from me. But I just wanted to clear that up, that I wasn't saying that you couldn't sing. I also want to ask, and Dr. Shiflett, you don't have to answer this tonight, but I know that just because it's not in the budget doesn't mean we're not going to get a teacher, because we move teachers around. Say the numbers come in and we don't have as many kindergartners coming in, but we have a great big second grade, we'll move a kindergarten to second grade. And I'm wondering if there's going to be some wiggle room at Broadway High School. And you can look at the numbers and get back with us once, because we also don't have all the numbers in yet. And if kids sign up for, I don't know, say theater instead of ag, I mean, we'll have to have the theater teacher more than the ag teacher, right? But as long as we have a lot of kids, where we've got to put the teachers where the kids are, right? We don't want to force the kids into things they don't want to take. And that does occasionally happen, but it all comes down to numbers.
What does that look like if there's only one section? So say they get 20 kids to sign up for Theater 1 and there's one section, do you have to have enough for 0.5? Do we have to can we hire a full-time teacher that does, a lot of duties and study hall? Right.
So I think looking at a 0.5 would be an option if you had enough students for that, but sometimes finding a part-time teacher is always a challenge. And then if, let's say, you hire a part-time teacher who really wants full-time, so then probably next year he or she may not be there, right? So you lose your consistency. But also so let's say 20 students did sign up, and I don't know what the numbers are, I don't have them memorized, but let's say 20 students did sign up, we're going to offer this. What does it fit in their schedule? Because they also want to take dual enrollment English, and it happens to be at the same time that we have this theater teacher, right? So high school schedules are very complicated, and and what we offer, and there are limits, and kids have to make, choices, sort of part of life, right? When you go to college, you can't take every course at the university. You'd be there forever, so you have to pick and choose. What are you going to major in? What's your minor? What courses? I love this course, but, with this professor, but it's offered on a day when I can't be there, so I can't take that course, so what's another course? So we kind of do the same thing on a microcosm at the high school level, but, the principals and assistant principals and counselors are taking in all the information of what kids have said they wanted to take, and then they also have, 2 or 3 different alternatives that they try to work through, and then they spend their summertime building that schedule. So we can, Ms. Laura, I'm happy to look at the numbers of how many kids, said they wanted this as their first option and to see what that looks like. Finding a teacher to teach one section, I'm not sure what, what that looks like.
Right.
And typically, because I believe we've had this conversation, typically our theater teachers aren't certified to teach a lot of other things, right? It's not, like, there could be a unicorn out there, and if you're out there, please apply. But there could be a unicorn that's certified for English and theater, or band and theater, but that's a unicorn, right?
Yes, we do have a few teachers who teach both English and theater. That is the most likely combination to find. What we have found lately is that JMU's graduates are single theater, and so they are looking for a full-time theater position. So as Dr. Shiflett said, it's very hard to get somebody to commit to a part-time or just one period.
Are there the other thing I think about is, as a former choir program director, when you are suffering from lack of numbers, you have to get creative. You can't just be like, well, I have no students. You do early birds, you do clubs, you do musicals, you do other things to try to generate the interest. And so there comes a point where, you've got to do the legwork to build something that we can then fund officially. So it's complicated. We'd love to carry on the conversation for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ford.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate you. Our next information item is some information from the literacy team, who's going to provide an update on middle school literacy and give us an update on the data. Welcome, Ms. Tate.
Thank you, Chair Horst, Dr. Shiflett, members of the board. At your request, we're here to share with you some data, and in particular, how the Virginia Literacy Act has impacted for the first time our middle schools this year. It's a 4-8 section of the law, but in particular, the biggest lift has been in middle school. So for tonight, we're going to show you that VLA implications, the 6 to 8 vowels information, and who did vowels in 6-8, Lexia Power Up, our required intervention, and also the data from Lexia. So I'm going to turn it over to Carrie first.
Thank you. So starting off talking about the Virginia Literacy Act. So a month ago when we were here, we talked about its implications for K-5. It is new, the impact that the Literacy Act has for our middle schools this year. The Virginia Literacy Act says every student in grade 6 through grade 8 receives additional evidence-based supplemental instruction and intervention as outlined in a student reading plan if they do not meet literacy benchmarks. What that means for our middle school reading plans, when we think about who is required to have a student reading plan, the VLP and VLA and all of those acronyms require that any student who failed the previous year's reading SOL, and that actually starts in 4th grade and extends all the way up through 8th grade. Any student who did not take the SOL, so thinking about our parent refusals, they also are required to have a student reading plan, along with any student who's new to RCPS without a passing score on a comparable state reading assessment. So we've had a few students this year to have other reading assessments that they were given, whether at a private school or out of state. As long as we have that data and can take a look at it and it was a passing score, then they wouldn't necessarily need a student reading plan. But if there's no data that could be examined, then they had a student reading plan written for them. A student reading plan entails that they are given the VALS assessment in fall and winter. It is not an option to be given in the spring, since their pass rate on the SOL test is what determines having an SRP the following year. That's why there's no VALS assessment in the spring. Students must receive reading intervention in addition to their language arts instruction, and it has to come from a state-approved list. Progress must be monitored and documented to ensure students are moving toward a goal. Teachers who are providing the intervention, along with reading specialists in all of our middle schools, take screenshots of student progress and put them into SRPs approximately once a month for parents to see student growth since the last screenshot. Who facilitates the creation and implementation of student reading plans? Our middle school reading specialists do. We have one in each of our 4 middle schools. And teachers support those reading specialists with documentation and parent communication and anything else that goes along with it.
All right, so to go along with what Carrie was saying about the VALS information, the state of Virginia VLP said anybody who fails the SOL has to take the VALS assessment. So we decided in Rockingham County in the fall that we were actually going to screen all of our students in certain areas of the VALS just to have that literacy information for all of our students. So we assessed all students in morphology, sentence comprehension, and spelling. Students who failed the SOL were also given the oral reading fluency, and if needed, the word reading subtest and the nonsense word reading subtest. The reason we're sharing Lexia data tonight and not VALS data is because in the winter, VALS decided that the only available tests for anybody were going to be spelling and oral reading fluency, and if needed, just regular word reading. So our students who failed the SOLs did take those as part of the requirements for the VLA, but we could not give other assessments to students like we had planned starting in the fall. Along those same lines, in the spring, there's not a VALS at all, so no students will be getting any VALS assessments in the spring in grades actually 4 through 8. So when we share data, it's going to be coming from Lexia, which Carrie is going to talk about now.
So Lexia Power Up was the VDOE required intervention that we selected last year. The reason we selected it was that when we took a look at all of the options that were on the state-approved list, every single option involved having students online in a program, which we know is not favorable, but it was the limits in which we had to work. Of the 6 that were provided as options, 3 of them did not include all literacy components, which was a big factor in determining which intervention we selected. Lexia Power Up hit all of those literacy components, and it was also supported with all-in funds, which we applied for last year and received 200 licenses from. Unfortunately, those funds are not available moving forward, but that did influence our reason to go with it, with its comprehensive nature and the fact that the state provided 200 licenses for us to use for our middle schoolers. Now, Lexia Power Up uses a blending learning model, which was another reason why we selected to use it. So 1/3 of the components of this program was that it is student-driven online, as all of the components all of the options that were provided on the approved list had. But Lexia Power Up also includes targeted teacher-led Lexia lessons. So when we see a student is flagging in an area that needs more intensified intervention, teachers have access to a lesson that will pop up that the teacher can actually deliver in person with that student. And it can be one-on-one, it can be a small group, or if they notice their entire classroom of intervention students would really benefit from receiving that Lexia intervention, the teacher can deliver it to all of those students as well. In addition to those teacher-led Lexia lessons, Lexia Power Up also provides offline Lexia skill builders. So let's say a student finishes a certain phonics component, for example, but when you dive into their data, we see that they were weak in spelling of this certain syllable type. a teacher can go into Lexia, and if it doesn't automatically flag with a skill builder for students to get extra offline practice, a teacher can go online and find it. So if a student just needs a few more repetitions that the online program doesn't provide, there are additional paper practice options for teachers to give to students. And some of the files are very large, but it's just based on how much practice students actually need in order to be more competent with that skill. Lexia is composed of 3 specific strands. There's the word study strand, which focuses on word patterns, spelling, and syllable types to improve decoding and spelling skills. The second strand is grammar, which targets understanding of sentence structure, parts of speech, and usage to improve reading and writing. And the third strand is comprehension, which builds skills in understanding text, identifying story structure, and developing vocabulary. We looked at VALS data and determined that the majority of our students were weak in decoding of real and pseudo words and in coding. This is based off of fall VALS data. And so that led the majority of our middle school students to receive a student reading plan goal in word study. A small handful of students also have a comprehension goal instead of a word study goal, but their VALS data from the fall and their Lexia fall placement test, or when they first got into the program, really drove which of those 3 strands was deemed the most important for students to get the most intervention in. I would like to also add that each strand has 3 levels: a foundational level, which focuses on K2 skills, an intermediate level, which focuses on 3-5 skills, and an advanced level, which are our 6 through 8 skills. A question that we've been asked this year is there research that supports the effectiveness of Lexia Power Up as an intervention? We want what we're using with our students to have benefit. And in a correlation research that Lexia Power Up Literacy did using Virginia SOL reading data in a large suburban school district in Virginia just last year, it was found that 91% of students who reached the advanced zone in any one strand also passed the reading SOL. This data found that 98% of students who reached advanced zones in all 3 strands also passed the SOL. So this has been something that we have communicated with staff and teachers in our middle school to show that if we can get them to the advanced zone in at least one and go in and look at specific data with the units that they complete, we can make sure that they're getting the support to master, I'll speak to word study, to master the phonics skills that they need to get to that advanced zone and truly be advanced.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
Because I took a peek. It looks like you're just sharing Lexia data.
That's correct.
But on that slide that you were just on, how do these numbers align with what we've seen on the growth assessment?
We have not done any comparison at middle school.
I mean, these are great promises, but what's the reality?
Right, and until after a year in it, I don't know that we can say for sure. As you know, we are likely to move away from the growth assessments next year and be using something different. It's very difficult to get usable data. And as you understand as well, because there are only 2 reporting categories on the reading, sometimes a student will be successful in a skill with one passage and unsuccessful on the next because they lack the background knowledge, the vocabulary. And so I hope, and again, I live in hope, that that word study focus will help grow the vocabulary and multisyllabic word attack that some of our students lack when they get to that SOL test.
So we've probably had this implemented about 6 months now. Is that correct?
Since late September or mid-September in some of the schools.
So October to February, end of March.
Yes.
how many students have we seen reach advanced?
We're going to show
Yeah,
you
okay, I'm
that.
ahead.
That's coming.
Okay.
Can I ask a question too, real quick?
Sure.
Just looking at, it says Lexia Power Up Literacy Correlation Research for Virginia SOL Reading the Study. It appears that it's done by the company itself.
It
That's
is.
internal research,
It is.
not like peer reviewed.
No. And again, you have to remember, we have to use an intervention approved by the Virginia Department of Education. So it's not like we can go out there and go rogue if we're going to follow the law. And I will say that the majority of the divisions in the state are using Lexia Power Up as their intervention at middle school. And, you know, I think, as Carrie said at the beginning, nothing compares to a teacher one-on-one or in a small group with a student. And that is the advantage of Lexia, because it provides paper lessons, which we know because the literacy team has been meeting monthly with the reading specialist. We've done data dives with all of the teachers who are providing intervention to look at what students are doing and to make sure that those lessons are delivered as immediately as possible, because I think that makes a difference as well.
Thank you, Kim. I have one final thing I would like to share with you all before I pass it back to Tabitha. We had 2 division goals with Lexia this year. Goal 1 was that students would have a minimum of 45 to 50 minutes per week of usage, and that would be in the strand, not total in a given week, and earn a minimum of 17 units per week. I do want to elaborate that units are the smallest, fastest paced building blocks of instruction, which are roughly 5 minutes each. And while levels are major comprehensive stages composed of multiple activities and many units that represent a broader skill set. So we can actually track how many units students gain per day and per week. We can look at it in the last 4 months, and we can look at it over the course of a school year. So we have many different chunks of time that we can look at student gains. And as we've worked with our Lexia representative, the 17 units per week came from her in terms of students who really take off and make lots of growth in the program. That's where that number came from. Our second goal was regarding teachers. We want teachers to log into MyLexia at least 1 to 2 times a week to monitor the following things: usage versus units, so who's spending a lot of time in the program versus who's actually making gains in the program. To take a look at who needs instruction, so who needs a Lexia lesson delivered, whether the program flags automatically and says that they need something, or if a student is hung up in a particular lesson in a unit, then I see them struggling and I can intervene and provide an immediate lesson that Lexia might not flag for. And we want teachers to also give opportunities to practice and apply what they have learned. So as Kim has mentioned, we meet on average with the reading specialists at middle schools approximately once a month, and we've done training with teachers to help them understand how to access all of the data that is in the platform. That way they can stay on top of it in a more immediate way to provide the immediate feedback and intervention that students need to go along with the online program.
Okay, so I'm going to share the Lexia data that we have. And just as a reminder, it's not for every middle school student. It's just the students who failed the SOL, because that's who takes the Lexia intervention. So the first screen here is all the Lexia data for the county as a whole. So this is all of our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders who failed the SOL the previous year. These are the 3 strands that Carrie spoke to. So the top strand is word study. You can see at the beginning of the year for the placement, 62% of these students were at the foundational level, 38% were at intermediate, and we had 0% at the advanced level. This screenshot was taken on March 16th. That's the last time we pulled up the data to check it. And you can see we now have only 18% at the foundational level. Intermediate has moved to 58%, and we actually have 24% in the advanced level. So that's the progress that we've seen since the beginning of the year. You'll notice that in grammar and comprehension, there's also been growth, just not as much. And that's because, as Carrie stated earlier, the student reading plans are mostly written based on that VALS data that showed that our students have a weakness in decoding or encoding. So word study is where they need to be working. The next screen, again, this is just focusing on the word study strand. These are our 4 middle schools. You can see the top school had 60% foundational at the beginning of the year, 39% intermediate, and 1% advanced. That school now sits at 12% foundational, 49% intermediate, and 39% at the advanced level. The second school on the list was 63% foundational, 37% intermediate. They're now at 13, 53, and 34% at the advanced level. On to the third school, again, high foundational number at 55%, 45 was intermediate. They're currently at 16% foundational, 67% intermediate, and 17% advanced. The last school had 72% foundational at the beginning of the year, 28% in intermediate. The current students there are 35% foundational, 57% intermediate, and 8% advanced. And I'd like to point out that this kind of just shows that whole gamut of like a level. When we meet with the teachers, we see how close students are to moving to foundational to intermediate to advanced. And a lot of these, like the intermediates, are a level or two away from being in that advanced level too. It can be broken down a lot more detailed, but this was the easiest way to present it tonight. And then the last slide that I have, this is just 2 classrooms that we wanted to point out because the teacher and these students are making amazing growth. The top is an 8th grade class. They were 53% foundational at the beginning of the year in word study and 47% intermediate. You'll notice there's no light blue currently in their class. No one is in the foundational level. 26% of kids are intermediate, and 74% of her class has moved into the advanced level in word study. Similar, the 6th grade class underneath, you can see started at 64% foundational, 36% intermediate. They now have 9% foundational, 64% intermediate, and 27% of their students are in advanced. And I should say in the advanced level, it's 6 through 8. So those students are right kind of where they need to be in 6th grade.
Can I just ask for, just to clarify,
Yeah.
the foundational, that's K through 2, intermediate grades 3 through 5, and advanced is 6 through 8. So that's the level they are on in that skill.
Yeah, so the foundational levels are K through 2, like skill levels,
Okay.
and then 3 through 5, and then 6 through 8.
Can you go back 2 slides? That one, that slide right there. So looking at this, based on Lexia's claims, I just want to make sure I understand. Based on Lexia's claims, if you're in that dark blue category, you have a 91% chance of passing your spring reading SOL test.
Yes.
So that means about 75% are still at risk.
I would say maybe not, only because remember this is of mid-March, and some of those students, as we were meeting with teachers in the last 3 or 4 weeks, were just a couple of levels out of advance. In other words, if we look at just the word study there at the top, sorry, my old eyes, is that like 50? Thank you. Oh, good. 49%. And some of it doesn't, in other words, just because half of those students could be a couple of levels away from
So you're saying
advanced.
more close, we just have
Exactly.
we just need more
And
time. But I just wanted to make sure I understood what Lexia is promising.
Right. And I will say, too, one of the things as we did the data work with teachers, Lexia does provide, we taught the teachers how to use the usage minutes that a student is in the platform, and it will divide it into minutes where they are actually engaged in the work and then other. And so as we've had these meetings with our reading specialists, and administrators are in those meetings as well, we literally pull up individual students and have each month to talk about what our concerns are about those students who are not making progress, and what that might be. Sometimes it's attendance. Sometimes there are discipline issues that have interfered. Sometimes there are motivation issues. But I can tell you, in being in the buildings with those administrators and reading specialists, as we looked at those students, and this last time we were looking at them, we literally looked at the students who were almost there and students who weren't. They could talk to us individually about every child in a middle school. And that is a credit to them in knowing their students and what the teachers are doing with them, in an intervention block, as well as sometimes being pulled by a reading specialist, special educators, EL teachers. And then there are, in a couple of our buildings, other people who are pulling intervention groups and working with these students.
I noticed one of the goals is that students will have a minimum of 45 to 50 minutes per week. That could probably be 2 20-minute. When are they doing this? Is this during their advisory or
They have different, every middle school does it slightly differently, but they have an advisory. Some of them call it R block. And
so it's occurring during that.
It's occurring during that time.
Is 45 minutes a week enough?
I would say for students who are our most vulnerable, no. However, these students also typically, and we recognize and teachers recognize, and so we try to play collaboratively, they may have assignments or need support in math. They may need support in science or social studies. And so typically, if they're just working in that R block or advisory block, they may be working 3 days a week in Lexia and 2 days a week getting other intervention or remediation support in other content areas. Middle school schedules are, again, complex as well. But the middle school administrators are working together too to try to better align that.
Did we give a benchmark at mid-year? And do we have that data by school? By grade by school? Like a benchmark release test or anything
Not
of that
in middle
nature
school.
to kind of get a peek at what we're doing?
Just the growth assessment.
Just the growth assessment.
Yes.
And that, as we know, is clear as mud sometimes.
I know.
It's not a good data set.
I would concur.
Okay.
But I would hope moving into next year that it could look different, that we could have that substitute test for the growth assessment. And that's a conversation that's being had with leadership, that would have more usable and comparable data.
Can we go back to the slide with the 3 blue squares? It's like slide 5 or 6. It just, ours is blank, and I just wanted to copy my notes. Keep going. It's like 3 blue squares. Yep. Nope. Keep going. The other 3. It says middle school vowels. Yeah, this one. Ours are blue blocks. That's good. Right there. Like, okay. Thank you. Nope.
I just had a question. So just so I have this right, again, not to make myself sound stupid here, we have about 2,200 RCPS middle school kids across the entire county. And this is showing, I'm just looking at the status and word study. What this data is showing, when they were placed, almost half of our students failed an SOL, is that right? And, right, these were kids that all failed SOLs, okay, or were opted out. And then also, when they were placed, tested at a level of K through 5. Is that right?
Ask the last part again, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry to make you skip around. This is the very first Lexia data. I was just looking.
Where they placed?
Yeah, the original placement for a word study. So out of 1,057 kids were placed here or scored, failed their SOLs or opted out. So they took this placement test, and 1,057 of them scored at a level of K through 5. And I just wanted to verify that.
K through 2 foundational.
Right.
Well, combined.
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 Yeah. K through 2 and 3rd through 5th. And these are all middle schoolers, and it's almost half of our middle schoolers across the whole county.
Correct.
So just to clarify, half of our middle schoolers are in
For
Alexia.
this year.
Okay. I'm going to ask this question as we just passed the budget. Do we need more reading specialists in the middle school?
We can always use more
Well, I
reading
mean,
specialists. I think
When you're talking about the volume, I don't even think one more at each school would.
well, and again, you have to remember too, at 2 of our larger middle schools, I request an additional English teacher because you have 2 teachers covering the entire grade level. That's a big load, especially if you have students who are struggling. So 8th grade teachers in 2 of our buildings have the entire 8th grade. Now, I would say that those students have made better than average progress. We know morphology is an issue for some of our students. Vocabulary is huge. And as the rigor increases on the test, to me, that becomes a greater concern.
I think the bigger deal at middle school is morphology over phonics, because if you can't, you can break those words apart. You got to learn how to do that.
And
you gotta
I
know
will
word
say
parts.
that typically the kids move pretty quickly if they're at foundational, if they're working in the program. It's filling those gaps about syllable types and helping them learn to be able to chunk words that they may not have been taught explicitly, or if they are, they just needed more exposures of that.
Well, and I do want to just throw out a little flag that our 6th graders this year were in 1st grade when we shut down the world for COVID. And so this might not be a long-lasting problem. I'm hopeful that this is something that this is filling those gaps that happen just because of shutdowns, and then, their 2nd grade year was kind of wacky because of how we had, online for part of the year and then in school 2 days a week. So I think they've overcome quite a bit, but that's what's looking at us
Absolutely.
in 6th grade right now. So I understand why we probably have some phonics gaps.
Absolutely. And like I said, some of those students just needed more exposures, and they're getting that now.
Does this, or do you all have the ability to break this data down by 6th, 7th, and 8th?
Yes.
Because I guess I would like to request to see, my concern looking at this, I'm going, do we have 8th graders who are testing on like a 2nd grade level, getting ready to go into high school? Are these 6th graders who are on a 5th grade level? Okay, not as much of a heartburn for me. But if we've got 8th graders who are getting placed because they're on a 1st or 2nd grade level in some of these categories, that's alarming to me. So I would like to see these broken down by 6th, 7th, and 8th, just to see, the pool of 8th graders,
Chair Horst, would you like me to share that with you or with Dr. Shiflett to share? I mean, we can do that.
If you get the data to Dr. Shiflett, he'll share out with board members. But yes, I'd like to see that
Yeah,
data.
I mean, not a problem. Anything else?
Board members?
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you all for your time. Did we finish with the meeting or with the questions? Okay, board members, our final two information items are a Finance Department staff report for March 23, 2026, and a financial review for the month of February 2026. You'll find those in your folder for your review. That concludes our informational items. We'll now move into superintendent comments.
Thank you. I'm logged out of my computer, but I think I can remember what I was going to say. So first, I want to give a big shout out to our fine arts programs and our I can remember and our theater folks. Musical season just wrapped up this past weekend. I had the opportunity to catch the two winter musicals, I guess, or fall. I'm not sure what time of year that would have. I mean, it was in December, so I guess it was not actually winter yet, but it probably felt like it. And then the 7 this spring, or late winter, whatever. And absolutely, they were all terrific. I love that our high schools incorporate some art shows with that, which is really nice to see what our students can do. So I'm always amazed at the talent of our students and the work of our teachers, our musical directors, choir directors, band directors, all those folks who work together to make that happen. So just really excited that I was able to see all of them this year. Didn't work out for me last year, but I was able to hit them all this year. And then the other thing I want to just kind of share with the board, and this is a good maybe segue. Ms. Tate didn't know what I was going to be sharing in terms of highlights, but this year we introduced some benchmarks, just one this year, and trying to pay more attention to our student achievement data. And next year we're looking to partner with the Comprehensive Instructional Program, CIP. 73 school divisions are already partnering with them, and that will allow us to leverage their benchmarks and use their resources, and that will then give us some really good data to use as we're moving through the school year. Plus, one of the things I'm really excited about, their benchmark assessments are allowed to be used in lieu of the growth assessments. So we will not have to do the state growth assessments. We'll do these benchmarks and then get some very, very rich data that we can use to drive some instruction. So I'll be sharing more information in the coming months, but I wanted to kind of give you guys a heads up. We've been talking among our instructional team and with our leadership about it. If this is something that we could leverage to help us move forward. I would say somewhere around 2013, 14, we kind of moved away from division-led benchmark assessments, and we can also track some of our achievement scores since that time. So this is kind of maybe bring us back in line to be a little bit more focused and a more intentionality into our work and leveraging the CIP. I think is going to be very beneficial to us for our teachers and for our students. So just wanted to kind of bring you up to speed with that.
Thank you, Dr. Shiflett. That'll move us into board member highlights, questions, and comments. We'll start with Ms. Irons this evening.
It was awesome this week to go see SpongeBob the musical at Elkton. The kids did such a wonderful job. It was charming, really delightful. So I was glad I got to take my son and one of his friends, and we had a great time. Pulled the soundtrack on the way home, too. So yes, passing the budget was quite a project, and I'm excited about some of the things on there, including I talked to Mr. Bailey today about the Verkada background check system that they're going to have. So in the future, when we sign into a school, it'll be a little bit different. We'll be using your license, and I've gotten to personally experience this at other schools. It works really well, and it just can flag things immediately for the people in the office. It is just something to note, a different system. Apparently there was one piloted several years ago that had some kinks in it, and this is not the same one. So I think that will just strengthen the safety of our schools, and it's in line with some of the other things I'd like to do. So I'm going to pass it on from there. But
thank you, Ms. Irons. Ms. Lohr?
Thank you. I too very much, I enjoyed the musicals, and I'm sad to see them done, but there's another one coming up. There's a elementary school musical at Myers on Thursday evening. So one more chance, guys.
And I forgot to mention Finding Nemo was also wonderful at Peakview. Sorry, don't want to forget.
Oh, I missed
Oh,
Finding
it's
Nemo.
so cute. It's super cute.
But it's always fun to see our theater in action. And please send me more information about like One Act and all the things that are coming up. I also had the opportunity to take some kids to the regional science fair, and some of our RCPS kids did absolutely great. Especially Parker Young won the Stockholm State competition, and this is the highest water award at the fair, and he has qualified for the state science fair. We also had James Gerst, Eleanor Kaufman, Isabel Steinbeck, and Mateo Musa will all be participating in the state science fair. Did I get the name right? Okay. And congratulations to those students. Oh, and one more. Molly Hilton and Henley Heggs placed first place for the Armed Forces Communication and Electronics Association International Award. So huge shout out to all of those students. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fleur. Ms. Cave. Ms. Burgoyne.
I was just trying to look at my calendar because I feel like I've lived RCPS the past 2 weeks, but I can't remember everything. The musicals were amazing. I do want to shout out this gentleman in the back here was in Anything Goes, and he was amazing, amazing. And you all are very familiar. Were you all in the musical as well? What were your parts? Because I totally recognize you guys. Okay. Yes. Awesome. Yes. Okay. I knew I recognized you guys. And are you all musical or JMU? No? High school? Yes? Awesome. Okay. Well, welcome. Thank you guys for coming. But yeah, you guys were amazing. All the musicals were just so much fun. And I didn't realize this when I got on the board because Mrs. Lore is always, she just remembers kids, and she's always like, I remember when you were a baby, and now I feel like I'm starting to see you kids. And there was a point where Mrs. Lore and I were at a show together, and we said, please don't be a senior because we want to see you the next 2, 3, 4 years. And thankfully, the girl we were talking to was only a sophomore. So now I'm starting to realize, we are also watching you guys grow and do amazing things. So that's been really cool.
And it's so easy to geek out and be such a fan of
Yes.
you guys. So we are huge fans of the theater department.
Yep.
And it's just so much fun.
Yep. So thank you guys.
Board members, I'll conclude by echoing Ms. Lore's comments from earlier, thanking you all for your hard work over the last couple of months, especially on the budget. We've had a very busy first quarter of the year. We've had a lot going on. Board members are very much engaged in going out and visiting schools in addition to and special meetings that we have as well. And I would echo what Ms. Lore said earlier. I feel like this was a very productive board budget session. We had a lot of great conversation as a board, and we were able to come together really well on our budget this year. And so I want to thank you all for all your time and energy. And then I also want to conclude by wishing everybody a fantastic spring break. We made it. Dr. Shiflett is not making us make up any of the snow days so far. We made it to spring break. You get the full spring break. I hope that everyone has a wonderful, relaxing, well-rested spring break. You just got to make it to Friday. And with that, we don't have anything further this evening. Thank you all for coming out. Drive safely. This meeting is adjourned.